Lyra Ashworth had been told her whole life that she was not enough. In the Thornwood pack, strength was everything, and an Omega like her was seen as the lowest rank of all. While other young wolves trained to fight and lead, Lyra was pushed to the edges of every gathering, whispered about, and reminded again and again that she did not belong. The night that changed everything began with a bonding ceremony. It was tradition in Thornwood for young Omegas to be matched with a Beta or Alpha who could balance their weakness. Lyra had dreaded it for months, but she had hoped that somehow, quietly, she might get through it without shame. She did not. In front of the entire pack, the Alpha chosen to bond with her took one look at her trembling hands and refused. He said, loud enough for everyone to hear, that he would not tie himself to someone so fragile. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Lyra felt her face burn as she stood alone on the platform, exposed and humiliated. Her father, the pack elder, did not comfort her. Instead, he turned his back. That night, he told her she had disgraced their family name, and that she was no longer welcome within Thornwood's borders. He did not shout. He did not need to. His quiet, cold words cut deeper than any scream could have. Lyra left before sunrise, carrying only a small bag and the clothes on her back. She did not look behind her, as the forest swallowed the packlands from view. She told herself she would not cry, and for the most part she kept that promise. Somewhere along the way, she had learned to lock her feelings away where no one could use them against her. For weeks, she wandered through neutral lands, places where pack rules did not reach, and no one asked about rank or bloodline. She worked in kitchens, cleaned stables, and slept in barns when innkeepers took pity on her. It was a hard life, but it was hers, and no one looked at her with disgust simply for existing. Still, exhaustion eventually caught up with her. One evening, weak from hunger and days of walking, Lyra collapsed just past the tree line marking the border of the Blackthorn Kingdom. She did not know much about Blackthorn, only that it was ruled by an Alpha King, who was said to be as cold as winter itself, a man who trusted no one, and softened for no one. She never expected to wake up in his palace. Draven Cole, King of Blackthorn, had built his reputation on discipline and control. Years of holding his kingdom together through war and betrayal had taught him not to trust easily. His guards knew better than to bring strangers before him without good reason, but that night, when his patrol found an unconscious young woman near the border, something made them carry her back rather than leave her in the woods. When Draven was called to see her, his first instinct was mild irritation. He had no patience for distractions, but as he knelt beside her still form to check her condition, his gaze caught on something at her collarbone, half hidden beneath her tangled hair. It was a mark, faint but unmistakable, shaped like a small flame curling into a spiral. Draven's breath caught. He had seen that symbol only once before, in an old book his grandmother kept locked away. A book of legends about the first pack, the very first shifters said to have founded their entire world. According to those legends, the mark could appear on any descendant of that ancient bloodline, though it had not been seen in generations. Most believed the line had died out completely. Draven stared at the sleeping woman for a long moment, his mind racing. He gave orders immediately. She was to be taken to the healers, cared for, and watched closely. He said nothing about the mark, not yet. He needed to be certain first. When Lyra woke 2 days later in a soft bed within unfamiliar stone walls, panic gripped her instantly. She expected guards, threats, another version of the rejection she had grown used to. Instead, a healer gently explained that she was safe, that she was in the Blackthorn Palace, and that the king himself had ordered her care. Lyra did not understand. Kings did not concern themselves with wandering Omegas. She assumed it was some kind of mistake, one that would be corrected the moment someone realized who, or what, she truly was. But days passed, and no one sent her away. Draven visited her only briefly at first, always with some official reason, always watching her with an intensity she could not read. He asked careful questions about her past, her pack, her family, but never once mentioned the mark. Lyra, still bracing for rejection, answered honestly but kept her guard up. She had learned not to hope for kindness, because hope only made the fall hurt more. Slowly, though, something in the palace began to shift. The staff, who at first treated her with confused caution, grew used to her presence. She helped in the kitchens without being asked, mended torn linens, and sat with the youngest servants when they were frightened during storms. She never expected anything in return. Kindness, to her, still felt like a foreign language, but she offered it anyway, because it was simply who she was. Draven noticed. He noticed how she thanked the guards by name, how she never raised her voice even when startled, how she carried herself not with the arrogance he was used to among alphas, but with a quiet steadiness that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. He had spent years surrounded by nobles who postured and lied to gain favor. Lyra did neither. She simply existed, honestly, without performance. It unsettled him in a way he did not expect. One evening, weeks after her arrival, Draven finally showed her the old book. He explained, carefully and without exaggeration, what the mark on her neck was believed to represent. Lyra listened in stunned silence, her hand instinctively rising to touch the spot near her collarbone. "That's impossible," she whispered. "I'm an Omega. My own pack said I was the weakest among them." Draven's expression darkened slightly. "Rank was never a measure of strength," he said. "Only a measure of how easily people convince themselves of lies." Lyra did not know how to respond to that. For so long, she had believed the labels placed on her were simply true, unquestionable facts about who she was. Hearing someone challenge that so plainly left her both comforted and terrified. In the days that followed, Draven kept her close, though he was careful not to make a public announcement. He wanted to understand what the mark truly meant before exposing her to danger or expectation. He assigned trusted guards to watch over her, without her feeling caged, and slowly, cautiously, trust began to grow between them. It was not romance at first, not in the way stories often claimed love began. It was smaller than that. It was Draven, remembering how she liked her tea. It was Lyra no longer flinching when he entered a room. It was quiet conversations by firelight, where neither of them spoke of kingdoms or bloodlines, only of small, ordinary things, favorite foods, forgotten dreams, moments of childhood before the world had taught them both to protect themselves so fiercely. But peace rarely lasted long in a world built on power and rank. Word of the ancient mark's return had somehow reached beyond Blackthorn's walls. Rival packs, fearful of what a descendant of the first pack might mean for the old hierarchies they depended on, saw Lyra not as a person, but as a threat to be erased. If the legends were true, her existence alone challenged everything their society had been built upon, the idea that Omegas were inherently weak, that rank determined worth. One night, while Draven was called away to handle a border dispute, danger slipped quietly into the palace. Lyra was alone in the garden when she sensed movement in the shadows. Before she could call for help, two intruders emerged, their intentions clear in the tension of their stance. Fear rushed through her, old and familiar, the same fear that had followed her since childhood. But this time, something else rose alongside it. Beneath her collarbone, warmth spread, faint at first, then stronger, like an ember catching flame after being smothered for years. She did not fully understand what happened next. Instinct took over, where fear once ruled. She moved with a strength she had never known she possessed, not with brute force, but with sharp awareness and quick decision. When Draven's guards finally arrived, drawn by the noise, they found the intruders subdued, and Lyra standing amid the wreckage of the garden, breathing hard, her eyes wide with disbelief at her own actions. Draven arrived moments later, having rushed back the instant word reached him. He stopped at the garden's edge, taking in the scene before him, not a helpless woman in need of rescue, but someone who had faced danger and met it head-on. The mark on her neck glowed faintly beneath the moonlight, pulsing gently before fading back to its usual quiet presence. He crossed the distance between them, without hesitation, and pulled her into his arms, not out of duty, but out of something far more personal. Relief, fear for her safety. And beneath it all, something he had been reluctant to name until that very moment. "I thought I might lose you," he admitted quietly. Lyra, still trembling from the encounter, allowed herself, for the first time in years, to lean into someone else's strength, instead of standing alone. "I didn't know I could do that," she whispered. "You were never weak," Draven said. "You were only told you were. by people who feared what you might become if you ever believed otherwise. In the days that followed, Draven made a decision he knew would change everything. He called together his council, and, before them, revealed the truth of Lyra's bloodline. He spoke of the first pack, of the ancient mark, and of the courage she had shown when danger came for her. He did not ask for permission to care for her, nor did he frame her as a symbol to be used for political gain. He simply stated, plainly, that the old systems of rank had failed to see her worth, and that failure would not be repeated under his rule. Whispers spread quickly through Blackthorn, then beyond its borders. Some doubted, some feared change, but many, quietly, began to question the rigid ranks they had grown up believing were unshakable truths. If an Omega, cast aside and shamed by her own pack, could carry the blood of the very first shifters, then perhaps rank had never meant what they thought it did. Lyra did not become queen overnight, nor did she seek a crown for the sake of power. What she found, slowly and gently, was something she had never truly known before: belonging. Not because of the mark on her neck, but because someone had finally looked past the label placed upon her and seen the person underneath. Standing beside Draven at the palace gates one quiet evening, watching the sun set over Blackthorn's walls, Lyra touched the mark at her collarbone, no longer hiding it beneath her hair. "For so long, I thought this was a mistake," she said softly. "Something wrong with me." Draven took her hand gently in his. "It was never a mistake," he said. "It was simply waiting for someone to see it clearly." For the first time since she was a young girl standing alone on that shameful platform, Lyra felt no need to brace herself for rejection. She was not the weak Omega Thornwood had discarded. She was someone who had survived, who had endured, and who had finally found a place where her worth was never in question. And as the last light faded over the kingdom, she allowed herself, fully and without fear, to simply be seen.